Hey, we want to welcome y'all to the Wayne Carlen Show. Now you know, now you know. So glad to be here. This is Carlen coming at you from Texas down south, and we got Wayne on the West Coast.
What's up, people? Oh, good to see everybody.
Hey, and we're so thankful to have everybody here for our show today. We think we got a show that y'all are really going to enjoy, and so we want to get that because we think it's going to be one of those shows where we need some time. And so we're gonna hit these topics for you. We're gonna talk about the thing that everybody's talking about, and that's coronavirus, which is happening everywhere. And then we're gonna segue from that into a show. We actually got rules for dialogue thrown in there too. Give y'all a walkthrough on that. If you remember from last time, we've done some of that. And then we're gonna get to our feature of the show, which is Black Panther and white privilege, and we're gonna cover that a little bit. So let's go ahead and get into it, and let's get started. We got a newspaper article we want to cover y'all with the Washington Post. Tell us about it, Wayne.
Yeah, this article is quite interesting. The title of the article is Trump Administration Working Out Details of Suspending Immigration During Coronavirus. You guys probably heard it. It's all over the news right now, where the other night the president tweeted out that he was going to suspend immigration. And the funny thing is the administration, a lot of people in the administration said they had no information about this whatsoever. So everybody's scrambling now to figure out how they're going to fix this executive order. But the interesting thing is there's a lot of controversy, obviously, because many people believe, and he's stated openly that all along he wanted to be able to control immigration, especially people coming from Mexico. And you guys remember some of the titles he gave them, some of the names he gave them. And so now under the title or under the guise of coronavirus, he is actually able legally to close these borders off to a lot of people. But it's gonna, it's probably gonna create, you think about, even more problems because a lot of people coming across, they do their work, a lot of them go back home, a lot of come across send money back home. And, in actuality, we're having more cases and sadly more deaths here in our country than they're having in theirs. So, I mean, this is just amazing, man.
Yeah, I wonder what would be the, because are most of those countries that we're talking about impacting the immigration, are we talking about Mexico? Are we talking about other countries? And what would be that screening process? Because surely we've got some type of screening process anyway in place. We've got to ensure that we're not getting infected personnel into our country. So I'm wondering how that plays out. I mean, because what are you doing when you do? At the processing center, are they now doing testing at the processing center? I wonder, what do you know anything about that? What are they doing?
I don't know anything about that. I would imagine that's going on now just because of the virus in general. But that's why people in administration said they were scrambling right now, trying to figure out and come up with some kind of thing that they can implement to come up with some guidelines. Because the people who are working on the border right now, they're in a dangerous position, obviously. They don't know people who are coming across, they're coming in contact with them. So this is going to be something that's going to be in the news. And is this a diversion? Who knows?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be interesting to see as that continues to develop, because the question is, how long, and we're going to cover this when we start talking about Black Panther later on in the show, how long, if you do something like that, do you keep yourself isolated for whatever your reason is? How long and how much can you really do that in today's society? So we're going to cover that. All right, so that's an interesting article. We got another one coming up here, and it's about reopening, and we're going to cover that one because in Georgia, we've got the governor there, and he's a Republican governor. He's got an aggressive plan on opening up that state and getting, quote unquote, back to business. And so I think that's going to be important because a lot of the things that are happening now, people are thinking that we're on the mend because we've done the right things. And if he's very aggressive about opening things back up, then we could see that reversed. And so you got both sides of people wanting to weigh in on that. But what I thought was interesting in this particular article, which was in the Washington Post, was that as they talked about how much Georgia had been affected, they centered specifically on what they call town down southwest Georgia, Albany. And in the article, it went through the pains of explaining that a rural outbreak in a heavily Black community. So I wondered, what was the context that they needed to identify that it was a Black community? And would they have done the same thing if it had been in a different part, because I've lived in Albany, Georgia, and I know how the town is separated / segregated. And so there is a resoundingly white side of town as well as a resoundingly black side of town. And so would they have identified if it had been on the white side of town? So my question is always, what is the why the requirement to identify certain segments by color? And usually they do that when it's black, but they don't do it the other way. What do you think about all that, Wayne?
Yeah, this kind of goes back to our discussion last week when we were talking about the whole racializing of this coronavirus. Not to say that certain communities haven't been impacted more, because we can see that statistically, and we came up with some reasons why. You know, it wasn't because of their race, but a lot of times it was because of where they live and different things like that. But it is typical of what we do here. It seems like everything that happens or comes about, we have to put some kind of racial connotation to it, and that's the sad part about race. And that's what the ones who initiated, that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to divide all of us along those lines, and they've done a really good job at it.
All right, so the issue is to open or not to open. And so now we found another reason to divide ourselves, and there have been protests. And so protest over those things. And so we've got this issue of the Open the Country protesters. Wayne, did you see that article? What do you got on that?
Yeah, I did. You know, it was a lot of different comments, you know, and you probably, if you asked 100 people, you're probably going to get 50 people for opening and 50 people against. In fact, in my family, this morning during family devotion, we had a debate, and we had 2 people for, 2 people against, and they had to, you know, back it up with, we use scripture to back it up because we're a spiritual family. And, but as me as being the judge, it was very good arguments on, you know, both sides of the spectrum. And I'm also a small business owner, so I definitely want my business back open right away. But at the same time, I have, you know, 100 people coming through my school every day, and mostly children. And we know children a lot of times carry and pass around all kind of things, colds and stuff. I have to be concerned about them as well, and my family. So, you know, as far as, you know, this whole argument about open right away, even as a business owner, I can't say I'm for that right away. I think we need steps and we need guidelines.
What's interesting about that all is that just like in your meeting this morning where there were 2 for, 2 against, you know, and when you do polls around the country, you find out that Trump has got support. You know, it's almost split down the middle on everything when everybody asks questions about things. And that's why it's so much more important, I think, that we have the ability to dialogue and come to the table and discuss these things, because, you know, instead of us standing in the streets and protesting the other person's viewpoint, well, let's come to the table and let's have a discussion. And so that's what we're trying to do with Erase Races. We're trying to say, let's come to the table, people. Let's have a conversation about it. I don't have to just hate you because you disagree with me. We could talk about it. But normally the launching point is to, you disagree with me? All right, I'm going to talk about how stupid you are and why I hate you. That's
Right.
really not the way we do things constructively in our society to make it work for everyone. So you know, that's what's happening with some of the protests. And so this is what we're going to do now. We're going to do our rules for dialogue role play so that we can try to teach people, because that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to teach people that we can, in fact, get along. And we're just going to show you some examples of what we are doing wrong and how we can actually make that better. And maybe you can implement these in your conversation if you desire unity, if you desire to get along with people, you know. And this could be happening in your house, in your family. This could be happening at your job. It can be happening in a lot of different ways. When you go to Walmart and you run into somebody in the store, if you use these things, they can open up a whole new world for you of being able to build relationships, which I think is the big thing, that we need to learn how to build relationships with people, and it's not happening now. Okay, so in our role play, what we do is we try to find a divisive topic, and we think we got one. His name is Donald Trump. And so Wayne today is going to play the Trump supporter. I'm going to play the Trump hater. And we're going to show y'all as we go through rule number 3. If you look at rule number 3 on our list there, we got our rules for dialogue. We talked about disarm, how you got to come to a fight with your hands open, or you got to come with an olive branch and not with a weapon. All right. So that's disarming. Humanize, you want to make sure that you identify the person you're talking to as a human being. They've got human feelings, human emotions. They care for their children the way you care for yours. They care for their mom and dad the way you care for yours. And it changes the way you relate to them because they are human just as you are. And so we're at permit. And permit is one that says that you want to give people permission to open up about what they really feel about things. You are because you value them, you give them permission to speak into your lives, speak their reality in your lives. Most of the time we don't do that. So we're going to go through how not to do that. And then we'll review each one so that you can see. Okay. So Wayne, let's get started. You're going to be the Trump hater. So let's go with your Trump hate.
No,
and then I'll be
I'm the Trump supporter.
Oh yeah. You're Trump supporter. Go hit it.
All right. So the media is always twisting everything that President Trump says about coronavirus. He now wants to close the borders, and people are complaining about that. If he doesn't close the borders and we get more virus cases, they're going to complain about that too.
Yeah, but he's always been trying to close the borders, and so the coronavirus didn't matter. He'll close them for anything. He'll close them if the sun comes up. He's just trying to close the borders, period.
Well, doesn't it make sense now to close the borders?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter now because he already had the idea that he wants to close them. He don't want immigration. He don't want anybody else coming in. He called them the S-hole countries or whatever. He just wants to close the borders. And so he ain't doing it now for the right reason. All right, so that's it. So now, in this is the way a lot of discussions go because you clearly see that we have two different viewpoints on Donald Trump. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to address an issue of closing the borders. So what we chose to do was argue about our viewpoints about Donald Trump rather than arguing about the issue of the borders. And so if we had really been concerned about the issue of the borders, then we'd have said, I would have asked, okay, well, can you give me more information on why you think this or why you think that? That would have been more constructive. So what we're going to do now is we're going to give you an example of the right way to do that so that you can see the difference, because most people would have thought that was constructive. You knew each person's viewpoint that they disagreed, but there'll be no progress in that because they will still have the same attitudes about each other and about the issue, and nobody is going to move. Okay, so let's try it again, Wayne, with this with a different approach, and we call this the Erase Race Rules for Dialogue approach, where we are giving permission to the other person to speak into our lives. Okay, hit it.
So my personal thought is that the media is mischaracterizing the president's viewpoints concerning coronavirus. What do you think about it all?
Well, I've disagreed with the president in the past on his actions because I believe he's always wanted to close the borders. And now coronavirus is really just another opportunity to do that. But tell me why and how you think the media has mischaracterized his viewpoints. Man, now see, that's powerful. People don't understand that. This is really deep stuff, though, because look at it. Each one of those dialogues, the person asked them, well, tell me what you think about this. And they left it so open because sometimes when we ask questions, even our questions are pointed and they're simply getting you, by answering my question, to confirm what I just told you. And so that's a totally different thing than asking someone, tell me what you think about it. Tell me what your view is on this. That is open-ended, and it allows them the freedom to articulate their viewpoint. Whereas when I ask the question, well, don't you believe that Trump hates all immigrants? I'm asking you to confirm my assumption. In the school of law, that's called leading the witness, you know, because you're telling them exactly what you want them to answer, all right? And so that's what makes constructive dialogue. When we give a person the opportunity, we give them permission to speak into our lives. And when I ask a question, I really do value you, and I want to hear what you have to say. Most of the time, that's not happening in our country today, and we need to work to make sure that that happens.
Right.
Okay.
I agree, honey.
All right. So, hey, now, Wakanda salute.
Hey.
We're time for our Black Panther white privilege conversation that we want to have. And I don't know why this, I'm really into Wayne took my card away earlier because I mispronounced T'Challa, and he said my card was taken away. I was like, well, we don't have cards. I thought we were taking away everybody's cards. No more cards. But I posted this to Facebook last week. If you look there on the screen, it says, we must find a way to look after one another as if we were one single tribe. You wouldn't believe the amazing lines. You know, I'm the Erase Race guy. You wouldn't believe the lines for Erase Race that I got out of that movie. I watched that movie just this past week, and I was just amazed. And so I posted this, and of course, it got some debate and discussion. And so we want to cover some of that as we talk about that. I got some general questions that I want to ask, and Wayne's going to answer, and we're going to dialogue and talk about those for a second. All right, on Black Panther. All right, so the first question we got, Wayne, I want to ask you, was Black Panther in your mind a black movie, or was it a movie with blacks? And tell us, what's the difference?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I grew up watching what we now term blaxploitation movies in the 70s and enjoying them, no doubt about it. You know, we felt good to go downtown Market Street in San
Cleopatra
Francisco.
Jones, John Shaft.
Ooh, and Pam Grier. Come on now.
Oh, don't talk about Pam Grier. I got bad memories.
But when I look back on those, if we were to term this, what you just asked in your question, I would term those more black movies. I looked at Black Panther, even though the title was Black Panther. But I think it was more a movie with black people in it, who starred in it, who directed it, who did a lot. But it was open up for everybody. Most people, not most people, a lot of people loved the comics. And so people knew about Black Panther long before I did, you know, and so this movie just, unfortunately, it brought out some bad in some people as well. You know, if you read some of the posts and things like that, there was a lot of people who were hating on the movie. But overall, it received rave reviews from everyone. And I'm excited about part 2. I can't wait for it to come out.
Yeah, I mean, and really the acclaim was worldwide. I mean, so I think, and that's what we got to understand. It's the principles. I mean, anytime you invoke human principles, every human is concerned. Every human can appreciate it. And I think that was what was so strong about that one. So really good. All right. Our next question is one about T'Challa and the way he viewed Wakanda. And so, because we hear Donald Trump talking about America first and wanting to close the borders and build a wall. Is this what T'Challa was trying to do in Wakanda? And what was different, you know, and what was the same? What do you think?
Woo. You know, T'Challa that was his mindset initially, and he was raised in that mindset. I think it's different. They weren't doing it because they didn't like other nations or because they despise other nations. They were trying to protect that ore that they had that gave them so much. I can't even think of the name of that now. Maybe I'll lose my card too.
Vibranium.
Vibranium. Thank you.
I watched the movie, man. I just watched it.
See, that's good. They were protecting that from escaping and getting out because some of it was concerned that it would be misused, which is exactly what Killmonger was going to do, and abused. And if you know historically, which you do, the continent, of Africa has been stripped of most of its resources, or many of its resources, for hundreds of years. And so it was kind of a play on that as well. They were trying to protect that from happening, because if they didn't, who knows what that vibranium would be used for. So that was very important. But I think in the sense of what a lot of people hear when they say America first, and when they say stop, don't let people come in, it's coming from a different viewpoint. It's not that they're trying to protect resources or anything like that. Sometimes it's just coming from straight, we don't like you, we don't like where you come from, and so we don't want you here.
You know, one of the things I think, and nobody else would have caught this, but I did. But when they brought in the FBI agent into Wakanda and they treated him to keep him alive, whatever, I noticed that T'Challa's little sister, who was the technological whiz, she continually referred to him as, and she used a lot of racial language. She talked about this white man. It was like, okay. And to me,
she called him colonizer.
Colonizer. Yeah, colonizer. And she used white too. You know, she said I've got to heal another white man, because she was also dealing with that other superhero. I can't remember which one she was taking care of him. And so I was like, yeah, so I think we have the seeds. And one of the points I got out of that is that we always have the seeds of that in our minds, even if we're not living it out. And so it's almost like we have to be intentionally aware or intentionally against that, because we could always do that with any people group. So that was cool. All right, let's go to another question. I believe that the movie operated on a couple of levels. you have the Black Panther name, which evokes sentiments of past race struggles, especially for you out in the West Coast, because Black Panthers was that always was something to be proud of. Black Panthers, all right. So you got those sentiments of past race struggles in our country, but then you also have the Black Panther as part of the Avengers, a group united to do good in the universe. So he's part of this, and I think that speaks to kind of like where we are as individuals, as people. But what kind of dynamics, what do you get out of that dynamic? And or is there something else in the movie you saw along those lines as well about that?
Yeah, and taking it back a little bit further, you're probably aware of this because you're a military person. There was actually a unit in World War II called the Black Panthers. And during that time, it was still segregation in the Army. But this unit was an amazing unit. And so the modern day, well, not modern, the 60s Black Panthers took their name from them. And the symbol as well. So they didn't just come up with that. They knew some history about the original Black Panthers in the military, and they were under General Patton. So they were amazing guys. Patton used them, and they did some great things. But you know, regarding the question or the comment that you made, the movie just it covered so, like you were saying, so many different angles. From historical perspective, you know, things that had happened in the country to what's going on right now. But one of the things that really stood out to me was that the Black Panther, even though he was the head of his nation, he was the king. He had a heart. He still loved all of his people. You know, he was a great leader that people could look up to. I love the issue between him and the neighboring tribe when they hadn't spoken in years, and T'Challa was trying to fix that because it wasn't his fault. It was even before his time, but he was trying to fix that. But it wasn't until the end when they really needed it, and the other tribe realized that T'Challa really had a good heart, and they came to aid them. They actually came together to defeat the enemy, which that's awesome. When two warring tribes, or at least two tribes who haven't gotten together in years, can come together to defeat a common enemy. That's where we all need to be.
Yeah, it's a very, very good point, because can we get beyond our history for the welfare of us all?
Man,
can we get beyond our history for the welfare of us all? And
that's where we are.
hey, and we understand history is bad. There's some bad stuff in history. Can we get beyond that for the welfare of our future, for our children, our grandchildren? And that's definitely a tough challenge. All right, so we got one more question. I got a final question. What was the thing that made this the movie for you? Because I mean, this was a great movie. I mean, really, and of course, by even box office standards, it was a great movie. And up to the point when it was released, the highest grossing Avenger movie that they'd had. So what made this such a great movie in your mind?
Well, I think a lot of elements. You know, both you and I have connections in Africa. You have a son over there in, I believe it's Nigeria.
Ghana.
I have a daughter that I adopted. I talked to her yesterday, her and her family. She's in Uganda. And so I have we both have a connection to the continent. I haven't visited there yet. You've been there a couple of times. I'm going next year. I promised them I'm going next year. So just seeing, I have to say, seeing people in a prominent role, displaying all kind of different types of elements in it, from being the king and the scientists and educators and superheroes, and even down to his cousin Killmonger. I had feelings for him too, because you could see this young kid growing up in the streets of Oakland, and unfortunately, the man who was his father, was killed at an early age, and now he was left with a lot of stuff that he had to deal with: bitterness, anger, rejection, resentment, just all kind of things that are plaguing our people, and not just Black people, but all kind of people who are dealing with that. It was just so many touch, feel, everything was engaged in this movie, and I actually wish that Killmonger could have, got changed a little bit, and they could have came together. I was hoping that, but I guess they didn't want to go there, because I think I could understand why he was so angry and upset. So just a great movie, great writing, great directing, cinematography. connecting back to Africa and then bringing it here to modern day here in our country too as well. Just awesome.
Yeah, and you made me think of a point because I had never really considered Killmonger that much but simply being the villain, in the movie. But when you think about it, that's the story of someone who couldn't get past the history, because he could have been as bent on unifying, but there would have had to have been some forgiveness for the things that he found out. But if you can't get past that, you bring resentment and bitterness, and then you act on that. And you remember at the very end, he said he'd rather die, and that's I'd rather die in my bitterness than live forgiving and trying to get along with people. That's some powerful hate. And I think we all, because, I was like you, I was sympathetic for Killmonger. You feel sorry for him at the end, but you're like, his bitterness and his hate is killing him. That's what killed him, because that's what drove him to that, because he could have gone there and I think probably reclaimed a position and been a part of that society, but
Absolutely.
the bitterness and hate he couldn't let go of.
Right? Yeah.
So very good. And so what's the link then? And I'll go ahead and finish as I do a little monologue here about how this ties into our concept then of privilege. Because the post that I had made earlier with the Avengers, it talked about, and Tanya, my friend, gave an excellent analysis when she talked about the fact that Black Panther didn't see privilege because he knew that everybody was a part of the same team and they shared their resources, they shared their abilities and talents. And isn't that where we're trying to go in America? And the issue is, how do we know when people are not willing to share their resources? How do we know when they are? And the key is, the only way you know is relationship. And I challenge people on both sides of the spectrum to engage, to connect, to develop relationships, and then you will find out if what you stereotyped, generalized about, you'll find that those things are true. But we have not engaged other communities enough to really know if there are people, if we have what she called co-conspirators. And I know in my life, there are tons of them, and who are moving forward. And I say this before I become a billionaire, I'm on my way. Before I get there, that's going to come from the relationships that I've built, because I've got such strong relationships that have nothing to do at all with skin color in all communities. And I think that's our challenge today, to realize that we are, in fact, like the Avengers. We have different talents, different abilities. Our power comes from the appreciation that we have of the abilities and strengths of others and sharing those resources as one tribe. So that's what we're talking about. You got any comment before we get to our T-shirt for our advertisement there, Wayne?
No, that was awesome. I mean, even in the movie, the co-conspirator, the FBI agent who initially, they were kind of at odds in the beginning of the movie, but at the end of the movie, they were tight. And they wouldn't have won without him either, because he stopped the planes from escaping. So the ships, they weren't planes.
Yeah.
So yeah,
whatever that machine was, huh?
Whatever. Yeah. We need each other. We all need each other. We're gonna win. We're gonna beat this.
Gonna win, because the Avengers win, we should win. All right. So the last thing before we get out of here, I want to promote the message. I want to get you to help in supporting, promote the message. We've got this $1 for one race campaign, which is happening, always happening. We want everybody in the country to give $1, whether you agree with us or not. You don't need a tax. You don't need a tax break on $1. Go to our website. We got Cash App. We got PayPal. You can just give your $1. We'll put that to use, because if you're not about unifying, we'll do the unifying part for you. As we travel around the country, especially once we open back up after coronavirus, we continue to go to organizations and entities and talk to them about the need for us to unite and become one. And then beyond that, we give them tools to do that, because if I tell you to dig a hole and I don't give you a shovel, then I've left you ill-equipped to do it. So we're going to give tools, and we're going to make that happen. And if nothing else, go out and get one of our fabulous T-shirts. We've got all kinds of T-shirts. We got a New Hope design that's out there. We've got the black, white, yellow, red, brown human T-shirt out there. We've got the one T-shirt, because we're going for this oneness thing. Hoodies and phone covers and a lot of different things. So visit our store. Go to eraseraces.com. You can get there via our Facebook page at Erase Races. And we want to thank y'all for coming out this evening. Enjoy the show, and be with us again next week on the Wayne Carlen Show. Now you know, now you know.
All right.
Good show, man.
Yep.